And I am thrilled to introduce Mina Jones Jefferson as our speaker today in the second of our Take 10 speaker series. Mina is serving as the Chief People Officer for Graydon here in Cincinnati, in a role that allows her to leverage her passion for people and her vast experience in the legal field. Mina began in legal practice after graduating from UC College of Law in 1990. She started at a large firm here in town and eventually became partner. After working in the legal field as a practitioner at a big firm for a period of time, she wound up then transitioning to the University of Cincinnati College of Law, where she served for many years in the administration. Some of you may know that she worked in the Career Services Department, eventually heading that section of the law school, and then moving on to a role as the chief of staff for the law school. She's now back at Graydon, where she's been able to leverage all of that vast experience in order to take on the role that she has now. In addition to her professional roles, she has been a longstanding and committed member of various boards in the area, providing important services to organizations from Pro Kids to the Legal Aid Society of Greater Cincinnati and the Cincinnati Bar Foundation. I think one of the things that I was most struck by in reviewing Mina's biography is that she refers to herself as a careerpreneur, a professional who's been managing her own career independently, almost like an entrepreneur. And as Maya's bio states, quote, "I've always been very active in managing my own career. Your career is yours to manage. It's your business. And I've been tenacious about my career." And I think it's that insight, that perspective, that personal experience, as well as her professional roles. As I said, she served as the chief of staff for the University of Cincinnati College of Law. I'm sure most, if not everybody on the call today is well aware of that. And in that role, at one point, she served as president of the National Association for Legal Professionals. So she's been at the top of her game in every realm that she's been in. She's been on the legal education side. She's been in the firm. She's in a role now that allows her to combine those two perspectives. And I think her insights shared with us today are going to be invaluable. So I am thrilled to welcome her. There's so much more to know about Mina, and I did not want to spend my portion of the presentation chewing up time when we want to hear from Mina herself. So I'm putting her bio in the chat, and I would recommend that you all review that if you have a chance to. So it's with great pleasure. Mina might not know this, but I personally consider her a role model, and I could not be more thrilled that she's taken time out of her busy schedule to be with us today. So without further ado, welcome Mina Jones Jefferson.
Laura, thank you so much for that generous introduction and for the chance to be a part of Take 10. So she stole my thunder in some respects, but it's clear I am a careerpreneur because I've made a career out of careers. I've been a part of this community for 32 years and only had 3 jobs. So you might be asking yourself, well, is that really entrepreneurial? Is that creative? Is that innovative? Is that even taking risks? Well, stay tuned. We'll get there. As I prepared my remarks, I have to be honest with you. I was stumped by the topic or the notion of managing your career in a post-pandemic world. What does that even mean? When we're in a space where your job, your work is no longer a place that you go, but it's something that you do. And so what is a career? Is a career just the sum total of all your jobs? Is it really your education, training, and work experiences? Or is it more of a journey with those experiences along the way? And if you really think about it, the landscape for careers has never been bigger. And we have a couple of things to thank for that. The UBE, the Uniform Bar Exam for one, first administered in Ohio in 2020. And with that, you were able to take the bar here and transfer that score into just about every other participating jurisdiction, except for Alaska. Go figure. It has the absolute highest cut score in the UBE scheme. And so gone are the days where you had to work and become licensed in one place, and then if you wanted to work in another, you might have to take a bar exam or practice long enough to be able to weigh in. So that's one thing. And then you add to that mix remote jobs, fully remote positions. So now you are able to take a bar exam in Ohio, transfer that score into any number of participating jurisdictions, and then obtain a job at an employer located outside of Ohio, but you can do the work right here from Cincinnati. Boy, that's a game changer. And as I continue to ponder what does it mean to manage your career in a post-pandemic world, I realize that no matter the time, no matter where, the fact is that career development has been and always will be a lifelong proposition. And so start thinking of your career as a business and apply an entrepreneurial spirit to it, because it will thrive and so will you. So as Laura said, I started out in private practice. I was a commercial litigator for 9 years. I had a really vanilla career. I was a summer associate, then an associate, and ultimately a partner. For 5 of those 9 years in practice, I was active in recruiting for the firm. In fact, I was an associate on the recruiting committee and ultimately became the partner chairperson of that same committee. I loved everything about it. I loved going on campus, meeting law students, identifying talent, working with the summer associate program, welcoming them when they took the bar exam and graduated the following year. I enjoyed all of those things. In fact, I was the type of person that others would seek out with their thorny problems. Inevitably, someone would show up on my doorstep and ask if I had a few seconds. And of course I did. And together we would come up with a plan to address whatever it was that brought them there in the first place. And it wasn't long before I started looking at careers and thinking that some people, you could tell pretty much out the gate whether or not they were going to make it. And it had little to do with brain power and was really more a function of another set of skills, things that weren't necessarily transparent. And so I was just perplexed, like, why don't we just equip people to succeed at the front end of this process and let them go from there? And then I realized, quite frankly, that was not my day job. My job was to be a commercial litigator. So I started looking around and thinking, where can I go and do this on a regular full-time basis where I can operationalize my passion for people and also leverage my practice experience and my network. And that's what took me to the University of Cincinnati College of Law. I was there for 22 years. Again, doesn't sound very innovative or creative. And really on paper, my job appeared to be the same all of that time, but that couldn't be further than the truth. Although I was the Assistant Dean for Professional Development for the majority of that time, I was doing so many other things outside the building that made me more valuable inside it. Things like I was on the university faculty grievance committee, a place where I honed consensus building skills as an administrator sitting around a table with a lot of faculty members, tackling issues or complaints, charges, what have you. And that introduced me to some people outside the building in different disciplines that ultimately worked to the benefit of students who were pursuing alternative careers. I was also a part of the Graduate Professional Development Council that allowed me to interact with others on campus who were supporting graduate careers, exposed me to differing theories, activities, and ways to equip students to succeed. I was active at the national level, as Laura said, with NOUT, and there, reimagining a lot of things. Things like go figure, in 2016, when I was the board president, I launched, or under my leadership, we launched, I should say, a virtual career fair. We piloted this model, and we had some law firms across the country who participated, and a few law schools. And the feedback was, it just doesn't work. We can't do this virtually. We can't do interviews virtually. We can't do career fairs. This just doesn't work. Well, fast forward to 2020. I always chuckle when I think about that one. I had an opportunity to reimagine job fairs. The diversity case competition is one example of that. I was active with the Women in Higher Ed Leadership structure and those activities throughout the country. These were all the things that I did outside my job, but maybe more valuable on the job. Those activities allowed me to build things, tear things down, break some things, really to practice things in a low-stake environment before trying them out where I work. So in many ways, I future-proofed my career and didn't even know it, because all of those past activities, programs, and efforts prepared me for my current role as the Chief People Officer at Graydon, where I am future-proofing our workplace and our workforce. And I was equipped for this role because I iterated the prior role and activities. And so I suggest that you can do the same. So a couple of things to keep in mind. Know yourself. You have to know how you work best. Case in point. As a second-year associate, I was put on a large case. There's probably 15, 20 attorneys on this particular matter. And I was fairly junior, and it was staffed with a lot of senior partners and decision makers, also known as people who could impact my career. So the head of the case had a habit of coming around, knocking on the door, hey, Mina, be in the conference room at 2 o'clock, we have a meeting. And I would just be shocked. And then I became anxious, like, what are we going to be talking about? What is this even about? How can I prepare? So I would show up to these meetings, and you people who talk to think, also known as extroverts, would throw things out left and right, and before I could even put a thought together, the meeting was over. Well, I knew that wasn't going to bode well long term, because people in that room would walk away thinking I either didn't know anything or I didn't care about anything. And both of those were not good. So I had to figure out kind of like how to best prepare and put myself in the driver's seat. And that's when I found out I'm an INTJ. I like to process. I need to process. So I took assessments and learned more about communication, preferences, thinking styles, and the like, again, to make me better and then to understand those around me. So armed with this knowledge, the next time Jim came, it's a 2 o'clock conference room. I said, great, Jim. What are some things we're going to be talking about? Well, he was shocked. He stepped back and he said, well, I don't know. And then he muttered some things. And I hung on to those things. I prepared and I show up ready to participate. And I found not only did I come ready to contribute because I had time to process, our meetings became better because he was more focused in the process. So know yourself. And now learning is just a click away. And there's a lot of free courses out there, LinkedIn Learning among them, formerly Linda, or massive open online courses. All of those things allow you to gain knowledge and skills in areas that, quite frankly, aren't covered in law school, but are all of the things that you need to know to succeed and thrive in the workplace. Things like, resilience, maybe change management or psychological safety. Those aren't things you learn about in law school, and things aren't really things that you think about in the workplace. However, if you know that they are at least a thing, you are so far ahead of most people. Secondly, know the system. And by that, I mean ecosystem. In law, we tend to be very siloed, and particularly in law firms, where we just kind of think about the work and billing. And then maybe we do engage in community service, but do you really think about where you fit in that big, broad legal ecosystem? You should. You should know things like legal operations. What is that? Why is that important to corporate legal departments? What are those core competencies? Why are those things important? Or maybe what are alternative legal service providers? Newsflash, they are no longer alternative. They're just legal service providers. So as the work becomes disaggregated and there are more ways that client needs can be met, you need to know what that means and how to meet those challenges and see them really as opportunities to thrive. And what about multidisciplinary practice? How are the rules changing in that regard to provide greater access to legal services, while at the same time opening the door ever so slightly to the Big Four? What does that mean? Again, these aren't things that you can bill for necessarily. They aren't things that anyone is going to go out of their way to tell you you need to do. But if you're going to be entrepreneurial, you have to know the landscape, the ecosystem in which you operate. And if you're feeling really reckless, take a look at how other industries are operating. That's where I found most of the growth, by considering other ways that people approach people, places, and things. You also need to know what you own, what you can influence, and what is just off limits. Now, if you own it, it's totally yours to do with what you want. You can tear it down, build it differently, add on, what have you. And I have used that to my benefit. For instance, as a part of the Supreme Court of Ohio's Professionalism Commission, their Student to Lawyers Biennial Symposium, I had the pleasure of chairing the last two that were pre-pandemic. And I decided we don't have to be the experts and create the proposals, the programs from scratch. We switched the model to a requesting proposals, and really the results were great. Just a little tweak, needed to use those consensus building skills to kind of get people on board as to why we should go in a different direction. But I was confident doing so because of all the things that I had done previously. Know what you can influence. And that's usually, you look around, those are those adjacencies. So things are kind of like right around you. Maybe it's departments that are right up next to yours where you can collaborate. And then even though something is off limits, that doesn't mean you don't go there. It just means you figure out what are the places that you can carve out so that you can influence those. That's very important. Was important as I worked with faculty, because governance is hands off and everything is governance, or so they think. That's for anyone who is maybe a faculty member or has worked with a faculty member, and they understand that. And even now, it's something that I'm sensitive to. I am an attorney in this role, but that's not my primary role, and I'm not an owner. So I have to remember that as I am building and reimagining. And finally, give yourself permission to sit one out. For the longest, we've had this notion of you have to go up the corporate ladder, right? Bigger, better, you just have to always be advancing your ball forward, and that's okay, but not necessary. Think of your career more as a lattice and less a career ladder. And, I was listening the other day to something about just the impact of the pandemic on the workforce. And they've coined a phrase, maybe you've heard it, the she session, given the number of women that exited the workplace. Some estimated as high as 3 million, 2 million, but a lot of people. And so now about 1 million jobs have come back, and 60% of those are occupied by women. So now it's the she covering. So I say all that to say that I do believe that you can have it all. I just don't think you can have it all at the same time. And now more than ever, people are aligning their career with their values. So pace yourself. You'll get there. That's all I have. Thank you for your time.
Thank you so much.